think we're actually at 2 o'clock though, so I'll get going, and any of the stragglers can just catch up. So we have 4 speakers here today, speaking on the subject of social media from very interesting, diverse backgrounds. And just in the interest of time, I'm just going to crack on. And the first presentation that we have comes from Abby Bird from the Black Country Living Museum. And I have that as a video, and I'm just going to hopefully start playing that now.
Hi everyone, my name's Abby. I'm Audiences and Communications Manager at the Black Country Living Museum. Give you guys a quick 10-minute overview today of the Black Country Living Museum's experience with TikTok. This is a pre-recorded presentation, as you can probably tell, and that's so I can easily show you guys some examples of content, and I can show you our back-end analytics. If you have any questions, by the way, I'm more than happy to answer those at the end for you. So a quick introduction to Black Country Living Museum, if you're not already familiar. We're a 26-acre site based in Dudley in the West Midlands, and we cover 300 years of history, including the Industrial Revolution and then running right up to the 1940s. We have over 50 shops, houses and industrial areas, and our stories are told primarily through our historic characters. So that's people dressed up in period clothing that interact with our visitors. So I'm quite lucky because the museum is really well set up for creating really appealing content, particularly when it comes to TikTok. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But first of all, I'm going to give you a quick introduction or overview of TikTok. I'm sure many of you are familiar, but just in case you're not, just a few points to cover really. So it's a social media app that primarily focuses on short form content. As of a few weeks ago, that's actually gone up to 3 minutes, though it did used to be 60 seconds. You'll notice how I've avoided saying that it's a new social media platform. That was very deliberate on my part. It actually launched in China in 2016 and in the West in 2018. So it's definitely not a new social media platform. It's popular with a younger audience. I believe around 60% of its users are between 16 to 24 years old. And that's certainly what we've seen reflected in our research as well. It's definitely more popular than people realise. I don't know how many of you know this, but it was actually the most downloaded app of 2020. So really popular, really young audience. Those are the key takeaways. So moving on to the Black Country Living Museum's TikTok story and our experience with the app. A bit of a fun fact that I like to tell everyone to start off with. We actually set up an account in late 2019, but it didn't really work. And that's a common thing that I see here on TikTok. There's a lot of really good museum accounts on TikTok at the moment, but there's also a lot of abandoned ones, and I totally get it. You know, TikTok can be a very all or nothing app, as in you seem to either reach everyone or no one at all. So fast forward to August 2020, that was the year that TikTok really blew up in terms of popularity, especially in the UK. After multiple in-depth conversations about the app in various meetings, we just sort of felt that there was a really good case for trying again for multiple reasons. First of all, the obvious one, pandemic meant that our doors were closed. So in a sense, we were forced to find alternative ways to reach people because they couldn't physically visit. Second of all, we wanted to experiment with reaching new audiences and broadening our appeal. And finally, we were pretty confident that we had someone on the team with enough experience using the app to make it work. And I think that's quite important. So we started off by posting 3 videos within the first week. And I was really surprised to find that we'd gained 10,000 followers. I was really, really blown away by that, actually, considering the results that we'd got previously back in 2019. And particularly I was surprised because back then we were one of only a handful of museums on TikTok, really. So going in, I wasn't particularly convinced that there was much of an appetite for museum content at all. Obviously, that assumption was an incorrect one. So I'm going to now tell you guys about the results. So within about a month of posting on the platform, I think we knew we'd hit on something special. I'll talk about why that is in a moment. As the months went by, the account just became more and more popular and more viral. And to give you a bit of context as to how popular and how viral, I've got a few facts and statistics for you. So first of all, the most telling one, we were the fastest growing and most engaged with museum social media account on any platform in the latter part of 2020, which is frankly insane to think about. At the moment, we have 1.2 million followers, so we're the most followed museum account in the UK on TikTok and the second most followed in the world. The most followed museum account in the world is Sacramento History Museum, and I highly recommend checking them out. Our content has received a total of 18.5 million likes and has been viewed well over 100 million times by people all over the world. We've also appeared in, at one point or another, most mainstream media. There was a live stint on national television for BBC Breakfast, which was interesting. And we also very proudly won Best Social Media Campaign at the Museums and Heritage Awards a few weeks ago. And then last year we were named in the TikTok 100, which is a very coveted award. That's something that's given for the best 100 TikTok accounts in the UK. And I don't think at this point it would be unfair or unreasonable to say that the account has been, one of the most talked about social media accounts in the sector over the past year, and that it's also had a significant impact on how this sector views not only TikTok, but generally the way in which we should be communicating with our younger audiences. So I'm just going to show you guys some examples of our most popular TikToks now, alongside that analytics, so you can see for yourselves just the kind of numbers we're talking about per video.
How do people stay warm in the Victorian period? Some houses had bedroom fireplaces, but you would only use those if you were really ill. Most people couldn't afford it. If you were really poor, you'd probably just grab a brick, wrap it in some cloth or some paper and put it in your bed. But if you had a bit more money, you might use one of these, a ceramic water bottle. You put your water in the hole here, pop it in your bed and hope it doesn't crack.
Let's make some lunch for our kids, 1899 edition. Right then, so today I'm making pork dripping sandwiches for the babby to take to school. I'm going to wrap it in a bit of old cloth for him, and I'm including an apple and all, because they're about the only fruit you can get round here. I got a load cheap yesterday. Now, normally he goes to school, does his morning lessons, and then he comes back round the house to pick his lunch up, plus his dad's lunch, so I always make him something to eat on the go while he's taking his dad's lunch down the factory. That's how most of the school kids spend their lunches, running round doing errands. I always like to include a little note as well. Today I'm writing, ain't it time you got a job, bub? He's 1899 and he's 12, so he's just about to go into full-time work with his dad.
Alright, wait a minute, don't scroll down, take a seat. I've got something important to tell you. Now I know some days are hard, that's how life is. And I know it don't always go your road, believe you me. But it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to cry. That's what makes us all human. Breathe, relax, and take it one day at a time. And whatever you do, don't beat yourself up about it. It'll be okay in the end. And if it ain't, well, it ain't the end, is it?
So these are really incredible results, as you can see. And the numbers are important when it comes to social media. Of course they are. But ultimately, so is achieving your organisation's strategic goals. And we are a living museum that charges entry. And so our most important goal is to get people to physically visit so that they can really engage with the subject matter. Our other important goal is to ensure that we are future-proofing our museum by ensuring that we're reaching the full spectrum of British society and not just the museum usuals. To that end, TikTok has had an incredible impact. So first of all, the vast majority of people that we've reached on TikTok, around 90% or so, are under 30 and have never engaged with a museum on any social media platform before. Secondly, before we reopened, we saw a 30% spike in visits from 18 to 24-year-olds, which was a really positive sign. And then finally, when we did reopen, we surveyed people on site, and around a quarter of those people said that they had visited directly as a result of TikTok. So that's not how many people have heard of TikTok. Most people had. That was the people who said that they had directly booked a ticket because of it. So I can say fairly confidently that our content on TikTok has had a direct impact on the kinds of things that we want to achieve as a museum. And that's something that we're really proud of. So why does our TikTok content work so well? This is the number one question that I get asked. And so I thought I'd just round off this quick presentation with a few thoughts on that. For me, it centres around a few things. First of all, the obvious one, good storytelling. It's probably one of the most overused words in our sector, but it's true nonetheless. Each of our TikToks tells a little story about the past or about our museum. And a good story for me is always one that captures people's interest. And what captures people's interest depends on the people that you're speaking to, ultimately. And so secondly, a good understanding of the audience is a huge contributing factor, I think, to our success. Because the brutal and honest truth with regards to telling stories is that not everything is broadly appealing and interesting, no matter how hard you try with it, to a wide audience. So my goal in creating TikToks has always been, would a 13-year-old understand or care about this? And without sounding patronising, this is actually a really, really good way to think about your content in general, because it turns out that what is appealing to even the most history-obsessed 13-year-old is also interesting to the most disengaged and easily bored adult. So of course, getting all of this right requires time. And I think that this is also what's contributed to our success, because we partnered with TikTok pretty early on, and they provided resources and support which gave us the thinking time that we needed to get things right. And that's really important, as I'm sure any social media manager listening to this can probably attest to. Quality takes time and creativity can't be rushed. And in my experience, at least, if it is rushed, then it's probably not good. So that's it from me. I hope that you've learned something new about the world of TikTok, and maybe you've been inspired to create your own TikTok account. As I said, I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of this session, or alternatively, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
That is perfect. Thank you for that, Abby. And I think it probably makes sense now for me to pass over to Edel from TikTok. After that, it makes the most sense, I think. And I won't take up any more time because I made a big mess of that first video and we're running out of time. So please take it away.
No worries at all. Can everyone see my screen okay? Amazing. So hi everyone, I'm Edel and I sit within the media partnerships team for the UK at TikTok. And thank you so much to Abby. I just enjoyed that presentation so much. Seeing the success of Black Country Living Museum has been a massive highlight for me in the past year. And 1920s Grandad literally never fails to make me want to cry. He's amazing. Anyway, today I'm going to walk you through a bit of an overview of TikTok, some of our best practices, and also some examples from some of the amazing institutions that we work with. So for anyone who isn't aware of TikTok, I would highly advise downloading the app and giving it a go. When you open the app, you'll find our For You page, which showcases an amazing array of different types of content, which should hopefully leave you feeling joyful and inspired. That's what TikTok's really all about. So taking a step back, it's been almost 3 years since TikTok arrived in the UK. We're going to be celebrating our 3rd birthday this August, which is very exciting. We've grown massively and we're now a community of 100 million across Europe. And with that comes a massive range of different types of content, whether that's fashion, culture, cooking, sport, education. TikTok really has content for everyone. And one of the key differentiators of the app is that when you open it, you're given our For You page. So this is a selection of content catered specifically to your interests, which means that over time, the content becomes much more personal to your taste. It's also important to think about what might grab the user's attention on the For You page when you start to create content, which is obviously what Black Country Living Museum has done so well. The For You page is based on an algorithm which ranks videos according to engagement. So you can see all of the metrics here that are very, very important, including your watch rate, which again, just seeing the analytics there was very, very good. So all of these factors are very important. In addition to these points, it's also very helpful to know that the majority of the views usually happen between 48 to 72 hours of your post going live. But if it's performing really, really well, it'll continue to be shown to a wider and wider audience until your engagement starts to slow a little bit. So essentially, the more mass appeal, the more viral things will go. We have an amazing in-depth blog post about how TikTok recommends videos on our newsroom if you'd ever like more information on this. And sitting alongside your For You page is the Discover page, which is the little search icon on the bottom. So this is the place where you can find inspiration and trends. The page is programmed on a local basis by our amazing content teams who are paying lots and lots of attention every day to what's happening in the app. Some of the hashtags link to little microsite pages where we aggregate content around particular cultural moments and campaigns. So you can see in the middle here, there's one called Fact Check Your Feed, which was about media literacy. We've also recently had a Euros hub, we have fashion hubs, we've had Learn on TikTok hubs, and lots of different types of content can be found on the Discover page. And it's a great place to start when you're trying to work out what you want to figure out from the app. And here is just some of our best practices for thinking about posting on TikTok. So always vertical content and keeping it short and punchy. You can film up to 60 seconds, but we would usually advise when you're starting out keeping it a little bit shorter. We are trying kind of longer form content, but usually around the 15 to 30 seconds is best. And then, you know, when you feel comfortable, try out different formats, try out different lengths. Leverage the trends on the Discover page when they're relevant to your museum. Grab and hold attention in the first 3 seconds, really, really important. And then try out different formats. Like TikTok, every video is treated in its own right. It appears on the For You page and it's not competing with your other content. It's sitting there in its own right. So you can try out lots of different things and see what works for you. And as I said, just some additional top tips. So yeah, the 11 to 30 second mark usually performs best, but we always say, you know, try out longer content, see what your view through rate is when it's a little bit longer. Always use good lighting. If you have a presenter, make sure that they are using good eye contact. And also you can use the TikTok text, which makes it feel very native to TikTok and is a great way of displaying information. When it comes to hashtags, you'll see in the app a lot of people use FYP or For You page, but actually that doesn't really do anything. So we'd always advise just use relevant hashtags to your video. It's very, very simple. And make sure you're giving really good captions as well, and captions that will also engage your users. And then shooting an app. So you can shoot an app and use all of our tools, which of course makes it feel very native. It is possible to also repurpose content that you have, but we'd still advise to use some of the TikTok functionality, whether that's the voiceover or the text, just to make it feel very native. And then, as I said, lean into the relevant trends whenever possible. I think Black Country Living Museum does this amazingly, but I do also think that, you know, if you don't feel comfortable leaning into the trends, like, don't do it. You know, stay authentic to what you feel is right for your museum, but then you might start to see some trends that you're like, oh, we could do that. That makes sense for the next video that we are planning to shoot anyway. And then try out different things. The more you post, the more opportunities you have to discover what connects with your audience. And then just a little bit about content co-creation. So there's lots of ways of engaging with the audience and engaging with other accounts within the app, which makes it really, really fun to really fun and really easy to co-create. So you can do things like duet, as we can see here, with a nice duet between Black Country Living Museum and Museum of London. We also have the stitch, where you could post a video and then ask users to stitch on an ending, which is very cool, or you can stitch on a clip of your own to someone else's video. We also have our challenges, as I said, which we launch on the Discover page, and they run across lots of different verticals. We have newsletters, if you were to be creating an account and want to work with us, which give you a little bit of a view on like what's coming up as well, which can be very helpful. And then there's lots of filters and effects as well. When you're watching videos, you can see what effect was used, and then you can save it to your favorites. So that's a great way of, you know, thinking of elements of the app that you want to use, and working out as well what other creators are doing within the app. And now I just want to talk you through a hugely important initiative that we launched last year that has become a really integral part of the app. So it's the hashtag Learn on TikTok. We had seen that more and more of our users were sharing their talents and their skills with others. In fact, it turns out that a TikTok video is a really, really amazing way to learn something. The fact that it's so easy to shoot, edit, and post a video enables anyone to share their talents with others. And as a museum, we highly suggest you use the hashtag when showcasing your expertise. Here are a few of the top tips for creating Learn on TikTok content. So as I said, use a TikTok text. The TikTok text is just very helpful for visually illustrating facts or processes step by step, in addition to giving a native feel. Use the voiceover feature if you want to narrate your video. If you're shooting something in the museum and you want to narrate it after, then it takes the pressure off you while you're actually shooting, and it just makes it really, really easy to feel very seamless. Try out the green screen. So you can upload videos and photos straight from your camera roll and then use them in the background, which adds great context and color to your videos. Leverage the relevant trending effects and hashtags. Just try and make the content feel very fresh, very fun. Respond to your audience. So test out reply to comment. I have an example in a second, but basically you can ask users to and ask your audience to ask you questions, and then you can do a reply to comment where you overlay their question on the video, and it's just a great way of showing that you're engaging with the audience. And then, as I said, and it comes down it really appears like notoriously throughout all of our best practices, but the first 2 to 3 seconds is really vital. How can you engage the user right away with your topic? And also just thinking of topics that maybe are like a little bit different, a little bit niche. And now we're just going to go through a few examples from some of the institutions that we work with. The first one is from the Met.
Why do we call this ancient Egyptian hippo William? It all started in 1931 when author Captain H.M. Raleigh published a story in the British satire magazine Punch about his poster of a hippo from the Met, which his family nicknamed William.
William radiates benevolence with all the warmth of a living creature, so that we have come to love and revere him with an intensity bordering on the pagan.
The Raleighs revered William so greatly that they saw him as an oracle. They even sought his advice on decisions. How he gave it, we don't really know. But every time they ignored it, chaos seemed to ensue. Raleigh's fantastical story was probably fictional, but once it hit the States, the name stuck, and the Met's hippo has been called William ever since.
So that's amazing use of the voiceover function, and it's really showcasing an iconic part of the museum. And then the next one is from the V&A. So excellent use of the TikTok text and showcasing what happens behind the scenes at the museum. And the next one is from the Uffizi. So unfortunately, the Italian is a little bit lost on me, but from what I've been told from my lovely colleagues, this is a fabulous Did You Know video on how Florence became the culture capital of the world, hosting its first national art exhibition in 1861. And the next one is from the Tate. So again, excellent use of TikTok text and really beautiful, visually engaging, in addition to being informative. And then the next one is from English Heritage.
Who said Frangle Castle was a long way from home? Oh, hello! Is there anyone there? Hello! My husband's forgotten his spare shoes. How's he going to march to London with Mary without his spare shoes? That poor child, Lady Jane Grey. She thinks she's going to be the Queen. But the people of England, they want Mary. Hello! Let me in! Oh, bloody Mary.
So great use of reenactors and also using the reply to comment. As I said, reply to comment is a really great way to engage with your audience. And just to add, I purposely haven't shown our much beloved Black Country Living Museum, as I knew we'd be hearing from Abby, who can talk about the account and their success 100 times better than I could. And now we're just going to talk a little bit about Live. So on May 18th, TikTok launched its Museum Moment Lives, which brought together some of the world's most iconic institutions in an all-day live global event for the very first time, starting with the National Gallery in Singapore, going across the world via Germany, Japan, Brazil, and many more countries, with the live finishing off on the other side of the world in Mexico at 2 a.m. And as part of the celebrations, TikTok also launched a new AR effect that allowed for a more immersive experience for guests at the Palace of Versailles, where you could come alive as Queen Marie Antoinette as you took a stroll through the virtual gallery. So for those who were missing their favourite cultural institutions in the UK at the time, people were able to view a live from the V&A in conversation with TikTok creator Hannah Lowther and the Black Country Living Museum, who gave audiences an incredible guided virtual tour of the 1930s. It was absolutely amazing. And then finally, just some key takeaways that we hope you will consider. Set up an account, give it a go, trial it out, and yeah, see what happens. Jump on trends if you feel they are relevant to your brand. Be authentic, create content you feel is fitting for your museum, but maybe try do it in a lighter, more native to TikTok way. Definitely engage with the audience through comments, questions, using reply to comments, or if you do a live, engaging with the comments as well. Definitely learn on TikTok content, show off some of the key elements of your museum and everything that our users can learn, and it might entice users to come and visit. And then think of ways you can incorporate live or working with creators. We're always happy to help on that as well. And our creators love to get involved. And then also, of course, try out lots of different content types and lengths. And then thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out to us if you would like some support setting up your account. And then I'll hand it back to David.
Thank you so much. And as I say, in the interest of time, I will not talk at all now. I hand over to Fatini from Museum of London.
Hi, everyone. I'm quickly sharing my screen. Oops. I hope that you can all see that. So hello, thank you so much for the invite. I'm really happy to follow from the presentation of Idel and Abby. Excellent talks and excellent uses of TikTok with museums. But I'm going to talk about the other side of social media. So how can we consider social media not just to serve and push content to our audiences, but how we can engage audiences to create content. So social media as an object in museum collections. So soon after the first lockdown, in March 2020, we launched a rapid response contemporary collecting project at the Museum of London called Collecting COVID. So the main aim of this project was to create a collection of objects to tell the story of the pandemic in London and how it affected the lives of Londoners, reflecting all the diverse experiences in the city during the pandemic. That was a very interesting project for us because not only of the very rapid character of the project, but it was a very good way for us to rethink collections and stretch the definition of a museum object and redefine it. So far we have processed 158 acquisitions, quite a lot. And by the end of the project, we will have around 500 new objects in the collection around COVID in London. So we wanted to stretch and experiment with new types of objects. So we recorded silence. So we commissioned a sound artist to record the soundscape of London at very, usually or, historically busy and loud places in the city. We collected dreams. So we had a partnership with the Museum of Dreams in Western University in Canada, and we wanted to record and capture the how our sleep and dreams were affected during the pandemic through video interviews that we conducted on Zoom and collected them in our oral history collection. And of course, the project was a very good opportunity to start thinking around social media, not as a platform, an out-facing platform, but an in-facing platform where it could generate new objects in the collection. So we started experimenting with WhatsApp, with Twitter, and with Instagram. So we collected an Instagram diary of the first 50 days of the first lockdown in London. We worked with 5 young Muslim women from West London during Ramadan in 2020. We created a WhatsApp group called Rama Diaries, and we're in the process of collecting this group chat that reflects the experience of these 5 young Muslim women during Ramadan in the lockdown. And then we wanted to collect tweets. We wanted to collect tweets because we have done it in the past. So in 2012, we did Citizen Curators, a project that took place over the Olympics, and we wanted to capture the real experience of Londoners during the Olympics. So it was for 2 weeks. There was an open call. We shortlisted 15 participants. We got their consent forms, and they had a requirement of posting 5 tweets a day using the hashtag Citizen Curators, which we then collected at the museum. So in 2012, Twitter was a very different platform. Terms and conditions were very, very different. So what we could collect in the end was basically this. It was a spreadsheet, a CSV file that literally had only the metadata of every tweet, because we were not allowed to collect any media associated with it, or even the screenshot of the tweets, because Twitter didn't allow it. So in 2020, because on the one hand of the stay at home advice, because of the communication remotely, we felt it was a good time to revisit our Twitter collecting. And the reason we wanted to use Twitter again is because we have collected tweets before. Twitter has a very good API that we can extract the metadata from the platform. It now allows the acquisition of screenshots in terms of the copyright of the design of the interface. It's quite an inclusive social media platform in terms of the average, the profile of the average user. And they have also coined the term viral. So for the sake of the Going Viral project, we wanted to honor that. We loosely defined viral for this project, that a tweet had to be retweeted, shared, or liked more than 30,000 times. We did want the tweets of the everyday Londoners. So because we were not planning to collect big celebrity, we had to lower the number of retweets and shares and likes. So the tweet had to be posted by a Londoner. It had to be about London, reflecting COVID-related experience. And it was through the first lockdown from March to basically June 2020. So in order to, as I said, to use Twitter again, we wanted to use a more inclusive platform. So based on our research, we did have some data that proved basically that Twitter is used by a diverse range of Londoners. So how we went about, so we worked with our social media colleagues at the comms department, and we basically start trolling accounts, identifying these tweets that were retweeted 30,000 times. And we started contacting people. So we started tweeting and DMing them to basically ask for their permission to acquire their tweet in the permanent collection of the Museum of London. As you can imagine, a lot of people were surprised. I don't think that a lot of people were expecting to receive a message from us in order to acquire their tweet. So that was a very interesting process. We ended up collecting 20 tweets in the end. We had identified a lot more, but these were the tweets that in the end we had the permission to collect. We did a partnership with Twitter, so we had a joint press release that announced the acquisition of these tweets, and Twitter was very supportive, and they also provided some good data from their own research around the boost of the use of Twitter over the lockdown. So what did we do different this time in comparison to the 2012 collecting is that in 2012, we asked the consent forms before people started tweeting, whereas in 2020, we asked it after they had posted something on Twitter. In 2012, we were interested in figuring out how we can accession these tweets in the collection, whereas now we're thinking more ahead in terms of how we can display it, potentially in the new Museum of London, in the new galleries as well. In 2012, we collected a whole hashtag, whereas now we cherry-picked tweets. In 2012, we used a piece of software called Tags that helped us to collect the whole hashtag, whereas now we use Twitter's API. In 2012, we didn't collect any associated media with the tweets, whereas now we did. And in general, now we had this partnership with Twitter, and we were more mindful around personal data, GDPR, and a more ethical approach to collecting, if you want. The next steps in terms of our social media collection at the museum is to basically, we don't feel that we have collected social media in the best possible way, because in the end of the day, a very dynamic platform, a very interactive platform, we kind of like degraded it into static screenshots of the tweets that we wanted to accession. So the screenshots reflect the look and feel of the platform, but by no means it reflects the dynamic character, the interactivity, the comments of that. So we are planning on work more on find the best way to recreate the Twitter environment and collect it as probably a complex digital object and not a simple screenshot. We need to revise and rethink our permissions process and copyright. I think that was the most time-consuming process within the project. So we need to come up with like probably a different permission process around social media. And our end goal is to the value of a tweet to look at it in the context of the rest of the collection, and probably add it as another museum object in the permanent galleries of the new Museum of London. So we still have a lot of work to do. I'm really interested in how we can open up our collections and probably democratize them a little bit more by adding people's words and people's views in our collections. We're not there yet, but I feel we made another little step towards something that we might find a lot more useful in the future. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much. Going back to my catchphrase, I seem to have been saying the entire day today. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat with your name and organisation. We'll get to them at the end. And now the perfect person to finish off in a concise manner, the former journalist, Pete Austin. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David. I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah, brilliant. So I, yeah, as David said, I'm going to be quite concise, 10 minutes max. And I guess I'm here because I took, unlike everyone else who's perhaps harnessed the potential of social media, I'm going to talk to you about how we decided to boycott a social media channel. It's quite the opposite, but so last year we temporarily left a social media channel, which actually, when you say it out loud like that, sounds quite extreme. So I'll go through the context of and how we came to that decision and the consequences of our actions as well. So I'm at the IWM. I'm the Assistant Director for Comms and Marketing there. And I think this is really pertinent to the kind of latter half of the title of this session about maintaining your ethical values. So firstly, I think for a quick recap, I know that it's a very painful year for everyone in the sector to recap, but I do think it's important to go through the background at that time, especially for us in July 2020. I don't know about anyone else, but that whole year was a blur of restriction impositions and lifting in, restrictions and branch openings and branch closures. I think we all lost track of whether we were open or closed. In July 2020, however, we were getting ready to open 4 of our 5 branches, IWM London, IWM North, Churchill Warrens and IWM Duxford on the 1st of August. So we've got 2 free branches and 3 charging branches, and the income from our charging branches is crucial for us, obviously, to be able to do all the great things we do, whether it's exhibitions about refugees or seasons at IWM London. So in short, to say there was a lot of urgency behind the scenes to get our branches open. I think that'd probably be the understatement of 2020. And it has to be said as well that, like many museums, IWM was strongly pivoting towards its digital programming and content streams. We commissioned e-learning. We're in the process of activating virtual tours. So there was a real focus on online activity, and how we were marketing online was no different. In fact, looking back at it now, the only way that it was different was we probably ironically had more to market because of all the new stuff that we didn't know how to perhaps do, that we had to learn on the job, and I'm sure everyone else did. So in terms of our marketing campaigns, we'd already paused large areas of our out-of-home spend in favor of redirecting it towards digital marketing, and we do our social media marketing in-house. So we were also looking at how to be agile enough to maximize our spend too. So, but regardless of whether it's digital, programmatic, billboards, whatever, anyone in marketing will tell you that that final month before you reopen is the absolute vital time. So that's where we were as a museum group in July last year. At the same time as all of this happening, a junior member of our team, the same one, ironically, who was being asked to redirect all of their spend into social media marketing, came across the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, and it was gathering pace. So now we really come on to the ethics and the ethical, staying true to your ethical self as an institution. So looking back on it now, the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, for anyone that doesn't know, it was a group of boycotts that took place during the month of July, many of them organised by several advocacy groups under the same umbrella. And since then, over 1,000 companies have participated in that boycott. The background to that, however, is that it began to gather pace in June 2020 when Facebook refused to censor a post that contained Donald Trump's "when the looting starts, the shooting starts" statement, which referred obviously to the protests that were going on in Seattle. For many behind the campaign, these were not just high-profile examples. These were just high-profile examples, when in reality, obviously, lots of people had concerns about Facebook perhaps not doing enough to stop hate and misinformation on its platform more generally. On June the 17th, it culminated in a number of groups taking a full-page ad out in the Los Angeles Times, and from there it kind of spiraled. So what on earth has this got to do with IWM? Well, at IWM, we have an editorial board, which is chaired by me and attended by several representatives across the museum, senior representatives, including representatives from departments, including exhibitions, education, public engagement, curatorial, commercial, the whole board really. It's an agile board which meets to discuss the museum's stance on whatever topics or campaigns are raised. And I would genuinely be fascinated to know from colleagues across the sector if this kind of thing exists in other museums. I'm not sure. I've definitely come across it in this form, but it'd be really interesting to know. Any member of staff from IWM, any branch, any level, can submit a request or a proposal to editorial board. And we're really transparent about the decisions that are made there too. So they're all reported through our governance structure. And at IWM, we're kind of lucky to have two things which work really well and help in those situations. One of them is a very clearly set and strong, well-defined set of principles. And the other one, it has to be said, is a leadership team that obviously advocates for us to stick by those principles and often will put our head above the parapet. So our editorial board considers requests against a number of criteria, and they are our remit, our status as non-profit, our status as non-political, our role within our community, and that applies to our branches as well as just the whole museum, and our position not to make value judgments on any causes. So the request came to the editorial board proposing that IWM takes part in Stop Hate for Profit campaign, pause all of its paid and organic, paid marketing on Facebook, but also organic posts. Safe to say, it was a very, very, very long debate. And actually the biggest area for debate, as I'm sure you can imagine, was whether the campaign clashed with our role as a non-political organisation. We were clear that participation would not constitute joining a political campaign. It wasn't a political campaign, but it was a campaigning stance on an issue aimed at a specific organisation. And these were just the editorial bones of contention. Arguably still a very big ethical decision was whether it was even a good idea to be pausing advertising on the world's biggest social media platform when we had a responsibility, not least to our staff, to get the museum into as financially sound a position as quickly as possible. And I also knew from a personal point of view that it was going to be me that had to explain this decision to the Director General and the Chair of Trustees, as I'm sure many people on this call can empathise with. So it wasn't just the risk of impact on visitors, which, let's be honest, was always going to be very hard to measure given the extraordinary nature of 2020. I don't think we were quite sure whether anyone would come back through the doors on August the 1st anyway. But it was also the brand risk of appearing woke, which I'm sure many museums have had to tackle across different issues over the last 18 months. So there's so much to consider with regard to what way the editorial board went. But there was a simple line in the original email, which I have pulled out and I have quoted since, and it follows as this. As a museum dedicated to telling the stories of, amongst others, victims of the Holocaust, how can we not be involved in a campaign which is solely about standing up against the spreading of hate and misinformation? So that was that really. I don't think any of us could argue with that against all of the criteria that we discussed. We explained the recommendation to the Director General, who agreed with us. We explained what we were doing on our social channels, ironically. And we were proud to be the first museum in the world to join that month-long campaign. We even got a nice email back from the people at Stop Hate for Profit. As ever with decisions like this, as I'm sure a lot of other people on the call will appreciate as well, it's once you've made them that you have all the challenges. It's not necessarily while you're making them, but we did pause all of our Facebook marketing. One of the challenges we knew we'd face was explaining our stance to our own staff. After all, the editorial board does its best to represent the museum, but those staff are the people who live and breathe the museum every day. No one who works for a museum like IWM and has an understanding of our cause and our remit was ever going to debate the good intention of what we were doing. But it did definitely raise some eyebrows at the time, not least within the marketing department itself, that we were going to kind of shun that channel. Another challenge, as I'm sure you'd expect as well, was carefully monitoring and having to accept the risk of the boycott on just business operations, primarily ticket conversions, moving to time ticketing at branches, conversions to our digital program. So we obviously had to keep an eye on all of that. And then the other big one was our status, as I mentioned before, as non-political. So primarily this was a challenge we met actually with our visitors and the public. Some felt we'd overstepped the mark in terms of going beyond our role and remit, but many felt we were also taking an important stance. It was kind of split down the middle. And it was very interesting as well, if not a little cynical, to have a look at these decisions against a backdrop of audience development and how generally the resonance with a younger and more digitally literate audience on decisions like this was a positive one. And perhaps our core audience, perhaps the core history lover audience, kind of more appeared agnostic or thought we'd kind of gone a bit too far. We also had to consider our trustees. I'm sure again everyone on the call understands that. And of course the thoughts and feelings of our sponsor department in government. We did have conversations with them about this as well. I'm sure everyone would be fascinated to know, albeit after the decision had been made, asked for forgiveness, not for permission. And it'd be unfair of me to say that they were anything other than supportive. I do think our timing caused a bit of an issue because I think a junior minister had a scheduled visit to Facebook HQ, but COVID put pay to that anyway. So we didn't have to cross that bridge, thankfully. We picked up some great coverage for the boycott, a plug for David, who interviewed me. But obviously that was nowhere near our list of reasons for doing it. And I guess it also did seem to catch the attention of the sector as well, which is probably why I'm talking about it here today. But pausing advertising on the world's biggest social media channel when we were just about to reopen after a pandemic was not an easy decision, and it was not the top of a slippery slope. We have rejected more than 20 or 30 editorial board requests since then around political campaigns. We don't pass through or pass a lot of requests that come to us that are similar kind of themes, and we're not going to turn into a campaigning organization overnight. Considering our subject matter, we are actually probably experts, maybe more than most, in objectivity and traversing incredibly controversial topics. But I strongly believe that our involvement in this campaign was an ethical decision and it was the right decision. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Pete. Trying to answer, I've got a page full of questions and we've got a question in the chat as well. Trying to do all this in the next 4 or 5 minutes is going to be interesting, but we will give it a go. The first question we've got is for Abby from Josh at the Weald and Downland Living Museum. And he asks, with regards to both planning and producing the content, who takes ownership of that? Does it sit with marketing, the curators, or is it a joint effort?
That's an interesting question, and I think it's one that we're still trying to figure out ourselves, to be honest with you. I would say that when it comes to social media, for me, the purpose of social media is to market your museum, and obviously you're marketing the museum, so an outcome of that is that someone might learn something. But our ultimate goal is to get people to visit the museum, especially as a living museum. That's really, really important for us as a living museum that charges admission. So it does sit ultimately with the marketing department, but with input from other teams, obviously. So yeah, I would say it's a bit of both.
It's perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Josh, for the question. I'll ask one really brief question, and then I think probably the best thing to do is say that obviously this session will be available recorded if anyone wants to look back over it, and obviously plenty of people will be watching this after the fact. But also I wonder if anyone else has got any questions, maybe if they DM the Museums and Heritage Advisor Twitter account, and I can follow up with the speakers and maybe do an article or another video or something so people can get their questions answered. But one thing, looking across everything everyone said, I just wondered, I know Adele, you said about short and punchy being the real important thing once you're getting onto Twitter, onto TikTok. Sorry, that's a bad slip. And then I was just wondering about what Pete said, obviously that IWM have an editorial board, everything has to be quite considered, and some of the subject matter is quite contentious. And I just wondered maybe what your thoughts and Pete's thoughts were on how you marry those things together. How do you approach a really serious topic, but try and do something short and punchy in the space of, I don't know, a few seconds?
For me, it's really about just like pulling out the key facts from that video. I think it's probably easier than you think. And often we'll work with partners and maybe the introduction section is very, very long-winded, but using the TikTok text and the voiceover, often you can relay a huge amount of information in a short video. And the second thing we would advise when videos are a bit longer is just make them into a series. You know, you can do a call back at the end of the video to say, come to our profile, check out more on this topic. And that often tends to work really well. And it's also a great way of, like, you know, spreading out the resource also.
Thank you for that. Pete, did you have any thoughts?
Only, you know, answers on a postcard, really. I mean, we spend all of our time trying to make controversial, difficult topics palatable, digestible, engaging. I think we do quite well. I think probably it comes back to the main tenet of my talk, which is just, you've got to stay true to your brand at the end of the day. I think if we went on TikTok, and we would have to come at it from a very IWM point of view, it'd have to be informative, engaging. Doesn't mean you'll see a huge drop-off rate, but we probably couldn't be super fun or a parody of anything. So I think it's just staying true to your brand, and then in that case, you tend to engage audiences naturally, in my experience.
I'd absolutely second that. I mean, like, I think TikTok users smell inauthenticity, so that is really important. And even, like, you know, we have some serious news brands on the channel, and you know, we have plenty of, you know, even like high fashion brands that, you know, their brand is very, very serious, and that's completely fine. I think, like, just using your own tone of voice and creating content that feels natural to the organization is really, really important, and that's something that we work really closely with our organizations to try and support them to do.
Thank you very much for that. As I said, I think we've got a matter of seconds left now on the hour. Thank you so much to the speakers. It's been so fascinating. I think we could talk for a lot longer than this, and in future it'll probably help if the host of the call doesn't completely mess up the first 5 minutes. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been really interesting. Thank you everyone who's tuned in live, and hello to everyone who's tuning in after. But this session will be uploaded in the next couple of weeks, and I hope you get a chance to tune into another few of our sessions in the next couple of days. Thank you so much.